The day Daniel Whitmore was buried, everything looked exactly the way it should. Black umbrellas gathered beneath a gray, heavy sky. Rain fell steadily, tapping against polished shoes and dark coats. From a distance, it looked like a family mourning a man they loved. But if you looked closer, something felt off. No one was really watching the casket. They were watching her. Emily Whitmore stood still, dressed in black, her hands folded neatly in front of her. Her face gave nothing away, no visible grief, no anger, no confusion, just stillness. A widow, surrounded by people who had already decided she didn't belong. By the time the last handful of dirt hit the coffin, Daniel Whitmore's family believed they had secured everything: his company, his properties, his billions, and most importantly, control. And control over the empire he built, control over his legacy, and control over the woman they never trusted. But what they didn't know was that Emily Whitmore was not leaving that cemetery empty-handed. She was leaving with something far more valuable than money, something hidden, something Daniel never intended for his family to find. And by the time they realized what they had missed, it would already be too late. Because this wasn't just a story about inheritance. It was a story about power, about trust, and about what happens when the wrong people believe they've already won. Who really owned Daniel Whitmore's fortune? Why did his own family move so quickly to shut his wife out? And what secret did Daniel take to his grave that could destroy everything they thought they controlled? And maybe the most important question of all, was Emily Whitmore a grieving widow? Or was she the only person in that room who truly understood what was coming next? Daniel Whitmore wasn't born into wealth. He built it. From a one-bedroom apartment and a second-hand laptop to a billion-dollar empire that stretched across industries most people could barely understand. Technology, data, private investments. He had a reputation for seeing the future before anyone else did, and owning it. To the public, he was a visionary, but to the people closest to him, he was careful, calculated, always 10 steps ahead. He trusted very few people, and even then, never completely. Emily wasn't part of that world. She had spent most of her life far away from boardrooms and billion-dollar negotiations. She was a schoolteacher, quiet, observant. The kind of person people often overlooked, the kind of person people assumed they understood. She met Daniel later in his life, at a charity event. One conversation turned into two. Two turned into something neither of them expected. Within a year, they were married. To outsiders, it didn't make sense. To Daniel's family, it made even less. They had always believed the empire belonged to them, even before Daniel built it. So when Emily entered the picture, she wasn't seen as a partner. She was seen as a problem, an outsider, a temporary presence in what they believed was a permanent legacy. They questioned her motives, watched her closely, waited for her to slip. But Emily never gave them anything to use. She stayed quiet, polite, distant, and that made them trust her even less. As the years passed, something about Daniel began to change. Not publicly. The world still saw the same confident billionaire, but behind closed doors, there were signs, late-night phone calls that ended abruptly, meetings that weren't on any calendar, accounts that didn't appear in official records. Even his own family noticed, but whenever they asked questions, Daniel had the same response. It's handled. And that was the end of it, because no one challenged Daniel Whitmore, not even his own blood. Then one morning, everything stopped. The call came early, sudden, unexpected. Daniel Whitmore was gone. A heart attack, they said. No warning, no time to prepare. Within hours, the house filled with people, lawyers, executives, family members who hadn't visited in months, all arriving at the same time, all asking the same question. What happens now? Grief didn't last long, because something else replaced it almost immediately. Control. Meetings were scheduled, documents reviewed, decisions made faster than anyone expected, especially Emily. She watched as Daniel's family stepped in, not gently, not respectfully, but efficiently, like this was something they had already prepared for. And maybe it was. 3 days after the funeral, they gathered again. Same family, same faces, but this time, no one was pretending to grieve. The room was quiet, not respectful, expectant. A long wooden table, leather chairs, and at the head of it, Daniel's attorney. Emily sat at the far end, alone. The will was opened. The first few minutes were exactly what everyone expected. Properties distributed across the family trust, shares allocated, control transferred. A clean, structured, predictable. Then Emily's name was called. A fixed settlement, enough to appear generous, but nowhere near what people expected. No control, no influence, no real power. Around the table there was relief. They had won. And then something unexpected happened. Emily didn't react. No anger, no shock. She simply nodded, stood up, and walked out. Within 48 hours, she was gone. No legal battle, no public statement. She left quietly, and to the family, it confirmed everything. She had been there for the lifestyle, and without it, she had no reason to stay. Case closed. At least, that's what they thought. Because weeks later, something didn't add up. Small inconsistencies at first. Transactions that didn't match records. Numbers that didn't align. They ignored it. At first. But the inconsistencies grew. And while the family tried to stabilize the empire, Emily was doing something very different. She wasn't hiding. She was working. A safety deposit box opened under a name no one recognized. Inside were documents, encrypted drives, handwritten notes, all left behind by Daniel. Not for his family, for her. As she went through them, a pattern began to emerge. These weren't just assets, they were hidden, offshore accounts, private holdings, entire companies that didn't exist on any official record. And then she found it. Full access, given to one person, Emily. While the family celebrated their inheritance, they had only claimed what was visible. The part that actually mattered was never theirs. At first, they refused to believe it, but the numbers didn't lie. Something massive was missing, and worse. They had no idea where it went. Then someone said her name, Emily, and everything changed. Private investigators were hired. Her life was examined, but what they found confused them. She wasn't spending. She wasn't hiding wealth. She was living simply, quietly. Which meant one thing. She understood something they didn't. So they turned back to Daniel. And what they found began to unravel everything. The empire wasn't what it seemed. Hidden divisions, unexplained deals, silent partnerships. Then they found a document, not financial, protective, a system, a parallel structure, designed to operate independently, and at the center of it, Emily. The deeper they looked, the clearer it became. The empire they inherited was just the surface. And the real power had already been moved. And when Daniel died, it transferred to her. Panic set in, because suddenly, they weren't in control. And then they found the recording, Daniel's voice. If you're hearing this, it means I was right. He didn't trust them. He chose Emily, not because she wanted power, but because she understood responsibility. And in that moment, everything they believed about her collapsed. She wasn't an outsider. She was the plan. For weeks, she said nothing. Then, she acted. Legal triggers activated. Accounts shifted. Control restructured. Not chaos, execution. Inside the family, everything fell apart. Arguments, accusations, panic. Then it went public. Reports, investigations, headlines. The empire began to collapse. But the most unexpected part was Emily's final move. And she didn't keep everything. She dismantled parts of it. exposed what needed to be exposed, preserved what could still do good. And in the end, she walked away with something far more powerful than money: clarity. She understood what Daniel had built, and why he chose her. Not because she was part of his world, but because she wasn't. Money can build empires, power can protect them, but neither can save them from misplaced trust. And sometimes, the person everyone underestimates is the one who sees the truth clearly enough to change how the story ends. So what do you think? Was Emily Whitmore a victim? Or was she always in control? And if you were in her position, would you have walked away or done exactly what she did? Because if this story proves anything, it's that real power is never where people think to look.